Have you ever wondered about the impacts of cancel culture, the free speech rights of social media companies, Section 230, and the California colleges grappling with free speech? Having studied these materials, I've gained a better understanding of free speech and the First Amendment and the type of role that it plays in each of these categories. There are a few fundamental aspects of free speech that people should know, such as the First Amendment protects some forms of expression but not others, protection of offensive ideas, and the right to protest. So let's get started. So let me break down the idea of cancel culture. Cancel culture is a significant and controversial issue in our country today. Chapter 8 of the book digs very deep into what cancel culture is and why it's important. So on page 2, number 229, it states that legal protections for freedom of speech are necessary, but not sufficient to create conditions in which free speech can maximally flourish, where all members of our society enjoy actual and equal opportunities to express themselves and to participate in discussions about public issues, no matter who they are and no matter what they believe. What this means is that while laws protecting freedom of speech are essential, they cannot guarantee a free domain for any public discussion. I believe that this is all very important because it argues that for free speech to thrive, in order for free speech to thrive, there has to be real opportunities for everyone in a society to express their views and take part in public discussions, regardless of their background or their beliefs. And also on page 229, it also says that the term cancel culture expresses the concern that there is some criticism that is extremely harsh and has an excessively stifling impact on not just the speaker being targeted, but also many other individuals. So other people also play their own parts when it comes to this. So according to surveys that are discussed in the book, there is a major percentage of us across the political and demographic spectrums who are afraid of the harsh consequences that may occur from speaking out on certain topics or ideas. It mentions that those surveys do not focus on speech that most of us think should be self-censored, such as targeted racist or other epithets directed at another person. Rather, they concern general expressions of opinion or even asking questions about complex public policy issues, including those involving racial justice, gender equality, abortion, police reform, immigration, and pandemic measures. One of the major things that fits strongly with cancel culture is counter speech. And I'm going to explain that a little bit. This is a type of speech that involves actively responding to harmful or simply offensive speech by displaying conflicting viewpoints, facts, or arguments to challenge the original message being displayed. So, next, we have free speech rights of social media companies and their users. So what are these rights? Well, on page 231, it states that consistent with the state action doctrine, social media companies as private sector entities have no general First Amendment obligation to honor free speech rights of anyone who uses their platforms or seeks to do so. The most important thing in this case would be the state action doctrine, because it is a legal idea that argues that the protections are guaranteed by the Constitution pertain mainly to actions by the government, rather than to private institutions. The book mentions that social media have their own First Amendment rights to decide which type of speech and speakers they will choose to host on their platforms, along with which they will not. Social media platforms have their own First Amendment rights simply because they are private entities or private institutions or whatever you want to call them, rather than being considered public institutions. So they have more of like a private side to them than public. The book also mentions a point about a 2017 decision by the US Supreme Court that declared, while in the past there may have been difficulty in identifying the most important places for the exchange of views, today the answer is clear. It is cyberspace, and social media in particular. It is important that cyberspace is mentioned here, and in case we want to have a clearer understanding of cyberspace, it refers to the virtual network of computer systems along with online information that is attainable through the internet, where online activities happen. And one thing I believe is extremely crucial when it comes to free speech in social media companies is something like editorial discretion, because I thought that would be a good example. I believe that this is important because social media platforms have the right to utilize things like editorial discretion in terms of what types of content to publish or what to hold back. Next, we move on to Section 230. What is that, you may ask? Well, it includes two provisions and is split into two categories. So let me break it down. The first one states that no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. And this means that this certain provision commonly protects any online operation that hosts third-party content, which includes social media companies. It also explains that without this protection of liability, people like online negotiators, for example, would be forced to serve as strict gatekeepers, analogous to newspaper editors or TV producers, allowing only handpicked, carefully curated third-party content. The second provision states that online services are not liable for any action voluntarily taken in good faith to restrict access to or availability of material that the provider or users consider to be obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, excessively violent, harassing, or otherwise objectionable, whether or not such material is constitutionally protected. One current battle about free speech is that California colleges are grappling with free speech currently. Interestingly, as public universities in California attempt to establish a balance between students' rights to protest and the safety of the campus, there are community colleges that are going to court with students and staff who claim that these institutions are infringing on the right to free speech. And I believe that not only free speech plays its part in this case, but also free expression. My hot take on this is that because these college students are struggling to get free speech rights that they deserve, it should be liable for these colleges to provide these rights so that these students are able to boldly express what they believe in without any type of interference from anyone or anything. And my counter argument in this case is that these academic institutions for sure should be required to balance the First Amendment with their task to be able to provide a safe and inclusive learning environment for these students. Have you ever wondered about the impacts of cancel culture, the free speech rights of social media companies, Section 230, and the California colleges grappling with free speech? Well, each of these have their own different meanings behind them. And to conclude, these are all very important aspects of the First Amendment that we should start to think about more often or more frequently, as each of these are changing the world that we live in today.